with your coordinator. Okay. Zander's been watching this for years. I wonder what his take is on this. Let's bring him in here, the co-host of Birds 365.
Hey, Sales, what's up, brother?
Oh, good, brother. How was your 4th of July, my friend?
Fantastic, man. Great holiday, great time with the family. Got to hang out with everybody in the family. All the siblings were around, which is always a great thing. Don't get to see them every day like we used to, obviously. So great holiday, a little good time off to recharge here and get ready for the training camp. Excited, man.
14 days away from today. How's that for you?
Yeah, man. It's right there, right? 60 days away from kickoff, 15 days away from training camp. Pretty amazing stuff, how quick time moves, right, brother?
Absolutely, man. So I started the program out today. You know what? Because I heard this comment and I read that. I don't really know who Chris Carlin is.
Yeah, I don't either. I never heard of the dude before this.
He said that he worked in Philly. He knows, and I'm paraphrasing here now because I'm not going to go back and read the entire context of it. But he said that Jalen needed to mend fences and there was issues with him and his way that he handled himself after he got his contract, after the Super Bowl. I didn't get any sense of that, okay? I thought that was a guy talking from 37,000 feet. And Reuben Frank, as you and I mentioned last week, said this is more of a turnover issue. So you know what I did, Zander? I went back and I thought about your quarterback since 2000. McNabb takes heat for his leadership. Wentz takes heat for his leadership. Vic took heat for his leadership. People forget Foles round 1. You dealt him for Sam Bradford. Then he came back for round 2. But people forget that guy had a 26 touchdown to 2 interception. And then he sent him to the quarterback killer, Jeff Fisher in St. Louis with the Rams. He took heat for leadership. Obviously, the guy who won the Super Bowl for you the second time around. And now here we are with Hurts. Is it me? But is this not just a revolving door? It just doesn't matter what year it is or what the quarterback is. There's always question marks on the quarterback in Philadelphia when it comes to their leadership. This is more. So to your point, what you said a couple days ago, this is a little bit more organizationally and a little bit more media made up.
Yeah, I think I mean, by the way, you bring up a great point. I mean, every quarterback since 2000. I mean, the one common denominator here isn't even Howie Roseman. It's really Jeffrey Lurie. But I think it's also a combination of a lot of things, right? I mean, this is an intense sports city. It's not like other places where, you root for your team and you hope they win and you cheer everybody on and you go home when you're done and you hope they win. Like, it's not like that. Like, we care. We care in Philadelphia a lot. And it's tough to learn to play with, I think, in a way, especially when you get the type of contract that Jalen got, when you get the type of contract Carson Wentz got. But boy, you're right. I mean, every single one of them, you got to wonder. I mean, is it them or is it the organization at some point? But the one thing I will say about Jalen Hurts that's interesting to me is I'm not going to go out and say what Chris Carlin said. I don't know if what he said is true or not or what to make of it because we don't know the inside scoop. We really don't. So it's dumb to speculate on that. But what I will say is it goes back to what somebody said on your show, and it goes back to one of the programs we had last year with Derek Gunn when he used to say, learning to play with this contract is a big thing.
Phil Simms.
Boomer Esiason, or was it
Boomer Esiason?
Boomer Esiason said on the show. I mean, he did a lot of stuff last offseason. Remember, he was in the TV show, he was in the music video, he was in all advertising deals all over the thing. And that's great. I'm not knocking him for any of that. I'm just saying, I guess it's fair to say, well, like I said, I don't have sources. I don't know if this is true. It's fair to question potentially if he didn't resonate with his teammates as much as he did the year before when he's making $1 million as a second-round draft pick. And in a way, he's Philly. He's the underdog. He wasn't supposed to be the starter. He wasn't supposed to be the great quarterback. He wasn't supposed to be an MVP candidate, right? Now all the flowers are given to him. The money's given him. He's the star. And I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying that perspective makes sense. I don't know if it's true or not, but I think a bigger point here is definitely what you said about every quarterback. I mean, every single one. Every single one.
Do you think that Philadelphia is a city that is the quickest to turn on a quarterback than any other city in the country.
No, I
That
don't think that's fair to say at all. I really
How long
don't.
did it take to turn on Wentz?
Yeah,
2 years?
but the Wentz story wasn't just us turning on Carson Wentz. In a way, Carson Wentz turned on us. I mean, when you shrug at winning a Super Bowl because you didn't have the chance to win it, and some of this stuff came out later. So I wasn't a Wentz hater. I'm still not a Wentz hater. We don't win that Super Bowl in 2017 without Carson
Correct.
Wentz. If you're a logical fan, you know that. So I'm not a Wentz hater. I'm just saying I don't think it was like, hey, the guy had a bad game and all of a sudden now Philly hates him. I mean, there's also many examples where it's been the opposite. I mean, we could have booed Trey Turner out of town into oblivion. Now we did for a little bit, but then you ride for him and you see what it does. I mean, Alec Boehm, another Philly example. Guy said, I effing hate this place. We rode behind him. Now he loves playing here. Like, I think it's just a tough love thing. I mean, it's like your brother, man. You don't, it's not just like, hey, he's and ha-has. There's a lot of toughness to it and realness to it. And we want you to succeed and we want you to effort and show it. And we know you're not going to play your best game every game. We know that. But if you ride for us, we ride for you 10 times harder. And that's always the way the city's been. And I don't think we've ever changed that. But
so if you have a mentality like a Ben Simmons or a Wentz, that's the guys that they turn on.
I don't even know about Wentz, man. I really don't. Because remember, this organization, for all of its good, it has its faults. And one of the faults that anybody, John McMullen especially, will call out is that our owner likes scapegoats. That's part of the reason he loves Howie Roseman, because when stuff goes wrong, he can blame Howie. Too. And there's the quarterback. And there's a lot of times when I think they create narratives, whether intentionally or not, that make people look worse. Like, I get it. I wasn't happy with the way it ended for Wentz. But put yourself in his shoes. You're a guy that rose to the top of the game. You played like an MVP candidate. You got paid the big money. You came from North Dakota and you rose to the top of the echelon of your sport. Then you blow out your ACL and you have to sit there and watch it happen with you on the bench. It's human. I'm not saying it's the way to handle it. All I'm saying is it's human. It makes sense, right? I mean, it's tough. I get it. And you have to be a good teammate because you're the highest paid guy in the room. And that requires you to be a bigger person. But to sit here and say like, it does make sense. It makes complete sense. That would drive me up a wall.
I'm going to tell you how I would have acted. I would have felt great for every single person in the room if they won the Super Bowl. But if that were me, I would absolutely not want Foles to have had the type of game that he had. And I know because it's a reflection of what my future is going to be in that building. And more importantly, how I'm going to be perceived. Is that a shitty attitude? Like you said, that's human nature. When someone gets fired, Zander, they don't want the next guy to come in and do well.
Right.
And fucking take the company to another level. It's very rare that a guy goes, hey, man, congratulations to you. Hey, you're going to say all the right things because you want to be and throw it out there and be a professional but internally, I'm not wishing you well. I'm just not.
Yeah, I think where Wentz was worse, and I think the Foles
he expressed it on his face.
No, it wasn't even the
You
Super
saw it in the
Bowl
locker
year,
room
though.
when he was like moping in the locker room.
I think
they showed that video footage. I was like, bad move, kid.
I think it was more the next year, to be honest. Like then the Super Bowl year. Like that is understandable. But when you go into the next season now and you have the problems and then Foles was still there and then he had the concussion. It was just honestly, dude, a lot went wrong for Carson at the end. Like it wasn't all Carson created. I mean,
how do you think the organization handled it?
I thought they scapegoated him a little harder than he needed to be scapegoated. I mean, remember, they came out with the whole shtick. You remember when Nick Sirianni got fired. The question wasn't, what are you going to do to make Jalen Hurts great? The question was, what are you going to do to repair Carson Wentz?
Oh, yeah. Right.
That was the question in the media. And then this whole dragged on thing went on, and they obviously traded him later that offseason. I don't want to put all the blame on Carson Wentz, but back to the main point about, the leadership of the quarterback in Philadelphia. I mean, it's fair. It's fair to view that from your perspective as an outsider of the city and say, damn, every quarterback here is getting chastised for the same exact thing. At what point do you point the finger at somebody other than the player? Unless you're just going to say we've had 5 straight quarterbacks that all have the same personality flaw, which that
Right.
doesn't really add up.
That doesn't add up. I mean, McNabb here, and I said this about Andy. Dude, Andy Reid has done more for this organization than anybody in the history of the organization, because he set the template of how you're going to act, how the offense is going to look, the investment in the O-line. All of that stuff was by Reid. And then the benefactors have been the owner and have been the general manager, Howie Roseman. Let's not forget something. Ever since Chip Kelly had his power stripped from him, that's when the organization from above has grabbed control of the locker room. Prior to that, it was Doug. No. Prior to that, it was Andy, and it was a little Chip. And after that, every single coach. Like, do you really believe Nick Sirianni is going to last 5 years plus as the head coach in Philly when the last coaches you've had haven't?
I think he'll last, because here's why. I think the team is too good this year, and I think they're going to have a playoff win this year, and I think that will get him back for another year. So that would be year 5. Now, if they don't succeed this year, I mean, he's going to be out the door. But also to the point earlier, Doug's wings were clipped directly from the Chip Kelly era. He was the first coach hired out of that, and then he takes us to the promised land with all the things around. I mean, Howie Roseman wasn't operating at the same level of a GM as he is now when Doug was here. I mean, that team was good, but to say that our talent now is superior.
22 was way better as a talented group than what that 17 team was.
The talent that Howie's assembled on this team now is just it's incredible. But yeah, I mean, you're right. And there's a lot of things that Andy Reid set up, and now, Howie and Jeffrey are taking the flowers for it, which, you can't knock them.
Okay.
He didn't get the job done, right? And ultimately, I'm an Andy Reid guy, but he ultimately didn't get us there. He didn't win us what we wanted him to win us. But you are right. I mean, most of the organizational philosophies they have, the things that they really care about, came from Andy Reid. I mean, even the trench stuff, right? Like, Howie loves the trenches. That's not because Howie woke up one day and said, I want to be I want to build in the trenches. I mean, that started with even before Andy, Joe Banner, Andy Reid, like that was
Howard Mudd,
right? Like all those things before. So, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Andy definitely set up the foundation for us to be as successful as we are now. Now they've done a good job. Everybody else, I think Howie's done a great job with the roster, to his credit, and that's probably the reason Nick will remain, right? I mean, how can you lose with this type of roster? It's almost hard.
Here's something else too, Zander. Somebody brought this up earlier, and I love the question. Who do you think is more valuable to the organization right now? Nick Sirianni or Jalen Hurts? When you're looking at these two men and how they operate the organization, how they look at them, and knowing the stuff that I just talked about, how they've questioned leadership with every one of these quarterbacks. Now, they've also had interchangeable head coaches. So get this, there's no coincidence that the coaches get changed out, the quarterbacks get questioned for leadership, and yet the same people stay intact in the front office. All those guys are 17 to 28-year guys that have been here with the owner since 2000. So I ask you, at the end of this year, say what you just said. He has a good year. They get to the second round, NFC title game. Hypothetically, Jalen plays a lot better, but not to a point where you go, I don't know if he's the guy. But he had a good, decent season. It's nothing that you're going to write home about. Nick, he brought him to the NFC title game. Can it be where the owner goes like this? Nick proved it to me that he's a coach that could take a team to the Super Bowl. I'm not so sure about the quarterback. They've shown you they've moved off these guys.
Yeah. So there's basically two ways to look at this. I mean, if you look at it from a business, obviously Jalen Hurts is the guy because one guy's making $51 million and has the highest paid contract, on the team, and the other guy's making $7 million, and they've already proven that they can interchange that person, without a cap hit, without those crazy things that you'd have to do with Jalen Hurts. But the second part of what you said is also very true. If there's adversity here, or if Nick proves that he has what it takes to lead a group of men deep, and you still have questions about the quarterback, yeah, they've shown that they're going to move on, but I don't see it. I think, look, I'm confident in Jalen Hurts because I've seen it. He took us to the Super Bowl. He played like an MVP player in the Super Bowl. Did he fumble the ball? Yeah, yes, I get it. It's football, man. Shit happens. You're not going to have a perfect game. But he showed me at the pinnacle when Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the league, maybe one of the most talented quarterbacks to ever play the game, is on the other field lighting it up. Jalen Hurts can go toe to toe. Now, he didn't do it last year, and I'm not giving him a hall pass for that. He has to get back to that level. But I don't think the organization feels right now about him like they felt about Carson Wentz at all. I think they're very confident. They're very comfortable with where he is. And to answer the question, I would say Jalen Hurts is much more important to this team than Nick Sirianni.
Let me give you a couple. I was going to wait, but let me give you a couple Big Sills observations going into camp, 14 days out. Just for me, by the end of camp, I want to see this and where this is at. Hurts and Kellen Moore and Doug Nussmeier. Does he get on the page with Jalen Hurts by the end of camp and ready for September 6th? That, to me, is one of the bigger questions this training camp. But the way that they run training camp, Zander, they don't believe in exhibition football. They don't really believe in practicing a lot. How are they going to get that dynamic and get out to a fast start if they go about their business? Do you think they're going to change the way they prepare for the upcoming season, or are they going to go status quo?
See, it's interesting because this is the first real potential for a power struggle, and it's not who you think. Nick Sirianni does not want less practices. Nick Sirianni does not want to go into a preseason game and not play a single person. That's organizational. That comes from upstairs where we're not going to risk our biggest investments, our best players, analytics, that. So that's where I think, that's what I was honestly, Dan, I was surprised by the Vic Fangio hire for this reason. Because Vic is a staunchy dude. He's not going to change his ways. And he's like, I don't care you drafted a guy in the first round. If he's not playing good, I'm not going to play him. And that goes against what the organization likes. He's like, I need my guys on the practice field. That's against a little bit of what the organization is. So it's interesting. That's where I think the power struggle is here. But remember, you have a head coach, who is potentially a lame duck right now. If he doesn't succeed this year, he's as good as gone here in Philadelphia. So in a way, if this offense doesn't get going early, his job is on the line. His career is on the line in a way. So how much is he going to push the front office to let them practice, to let them do what they need to do to get on the same page? Or does he risk going into the season with no preseason, minimal practice, minimal hitting, and it takes 8 weeks or 10 weeks to get this thing going? That's a big risk. That's a bigger risk for Nick Sirianni than it is for the front office. So I wonder how much he's going to push. And I think it's going to tell you a lot about who's in control. Now we know who's in control, but
if they break camp early, I'll know that they're going status quo.
I think the preseason games will be a bigger tell. Like if they don't roll out anybody in preseason, it's the same thing. The organization is calling all the shots on that stuff, and potentially you could see the offense stagger at the start, and you almost can't even blame them, man. Like, how can you get an offense, get together 10 times, 15 times, 20 times in the offseason for a 45-minute session and expect them to compete with the upper echelon of the NFL?
Impossible.
It doesn't work, right? So it's like you can't even. How can I even criticize Jalen Hurts or Kellen Moore or Nick Sirianni if they're not given the leeway they need to be able to create an offense that works? So it's interesting. We will see what happens, but I think there's a lot in the line for Nick Sirianni when you're talking about that.
I heard you guys talking about Barkley. The way you're talking, the way John's talking, you think they're going to use him exactly the same way as Miles Sanders, but it's going to be better. Is that what we're saying?
No, that's
Because
not what
I'm
I'm
still
saying.
not sold
Admittedly,
his role yet. I don't know what his role is. What's his role going to be?
nobody
Is
knows.
it a moving curve role? Like early they get out while the offense is getting its feet wet, then they slow him up. I mean, what is exactly his role in this
Yeah,
process?
admittedly, my thought process on Saquon, John, thanks for the super chat, man.
He
Appreciate
should
that.
not be the OC. He was 2-5 when he was OC.
Yeah. Anyway, my thought process on Saquon Barkley admittedly has changed a little bit because John's added a lot of perspective. You've added a lot of perspective, and my mind's kind of going back and forth on what they're going to do with him here. So I'll stick to what I've been saying. I think the situational impact of Saquon Barkley is going to matter a lot more than even whether they throw him the ball or whether he gets 1,500 yards. Like, we got to the Super Bowl. You know who let us down immediately? Miles Sanders. Like, you got late in games last year. We couldn't close out games because we didn't have a good running back. Like, that wasn't DeAndre Swift's role, or at least that's not how he was used. So situationally, I think Saquon can really help if they use him properly. And I'm not even talking about creating him, making him a passing guy, making him wide receiver 3, running crazy swing routes. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about traditional running back, get us yards on first down, get us yards on third and short or whatever it might be. Set up the play action if we need it with Kellen Moore because we know he likes that. It's not really Jalen's game, but it will help open up the passing game and have that situational impact. When we need you to close out a game, you got to be the bell cow. You got to take the ball and you got to run with it. You got to get first downs. So, look, I'm optimistic on the player. I don't know if they're going to use him right. They've been a weird organization with running backs. They really have. I mean, my favorite tandem was the Super Bowl year that we won, not 22. When we had Jay Ajayi, we traded for him. We brought in LeGarrette Blount, and we had an undrafted free agent in Corey Clement, who's out of Glassboro, New Jersey, 45 minutes away from where I am. I mean, that was the best trio that we've had, and you had a guy for each moment. You had your bruiser. Corey Clement caught a touchdown in the Super Bowl. He was great in that game. Then you had Jay Ajayi, your shifty back. I don't know why they've gotten away from that. I really don't. Like, we have 3 running backs right now. We have Saquon Barkley, you have Kenny Gainwell, you have Will Shipley. They're all the same thing.
Yeah.
Now, there's different levels of talent in the room, but they're all the same thing. They're more of a gadgety, fidgety, not north to south guy. They're kind of a shiftier, jukey back. They can catch the ball in the backfield. Now Saquon can block, which is great. Miles and DeAndre were not good at that, so I think that's a big help. But again, we didn't pay $12 million to Saquon Barkley to block, so it'll be interesting to see. It's one of my biggest things I'm watching Big Sales going into the season is what is Saquon Barkley's role on this football team?
I don't know how they're going to define that. I thought about something during the holidays on that wide receiver 3 conversation we had last week.
Yeah.
And I said that's the slot position. I'd like to see them utilize the slot position, not with a third wideout, but with your 2 stars. That means you get production out of that wide receiver 3 spot, put someone else over on the numbers, and rotate my 2 biggest stars in that 3 wide receiver hole. Because what I don't want it to be, again, Zander, for 2 years in a row, I don't want it to be a vacant position where you're doing nothing with it and you're playing 10 versus 11. They need to utilize that because it's a mismatch problem when you put a more talented player there, because in the slot, you're going against the lesser talented guys
and it
that
makes
are
it
on
harder
that defense.
Yeah,
They've got, in my opinion, I want to see how creative they're going to be at that position.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think to be honest, I think they're going to do kind of what you're saying here, because I think Kellen Moore this is where I like Kellen. I think he's a little bit more open to the creativity and putting AJ, Devontae, motion, stuff like that. So I think it's a good point. I wouldn't be surprised if they go there, but then I worry about who you're putting on the numbers, because look, I get what you're saying. Put a guy out there, he's a decoy, but
if he can't read, at least move the players around where you have to move the defense around.
Right, because it keeps them on their toes. It keeps them guessing. It keeps them looking for different things. That's a no-brainer. I would agree with that fully. But you also need somebody out there that has some level of threat. I'm not talking. I don't need. And then, like last time I said this, someone was like, "We have AJ and Devontae. Like you're not going to get touches to them." I don't even care about the touches. I don't care if he doesn't touch the ball all season, but the illusion for the defense is important for your top guys. Last year, when Quez Watkins started sucking eggs, nobody even thought about him. Jalen stopped thinking about him. And that created this onus where by the end of the season, what were we? We were as predictable as it gets on offense because you knew when that ball, if Jalen dropped back to throw, you knew where he was going with the ball. It was one of two players. That was it. Or he was running out to the right. That was the game. That was the offense late in the year last year. So if you have another player out there, even if he doesn't catch the ball, he needs to have the illusion that he can break the defense's back if they let him. And that will make more opportunities for our star players. But you're right. I mean, I'd love to see AJ Brown in that slot, man, or Devontae Smith. I think both would be tremendous in there. Let's see though, man. I think we need another body on the outside. I don't really care who it is at this point. I think we need one more receiver that's at least something. I don't think Paris Campbell is striking fear in anybody.
Two last ones here for you. So would it be a concern level for you if Hurts is in the middle of training camp and still struggling after OTAs, mini camp, everything in the offseason, where you're hearing people and saying that, he's behind a little bit, he's slow? Would that be a concern to the organization and to you that if he continues his struggles as he's going through minicamp?
Yeah, see, this is a tough one because I'm going to ride the fence on it, and you're going to call me a politician, which is fine. But how can we say what we said earlier, right, about the offense and having the players on the field and enough practice time to get things going and all of the things that you need to get in rhythm in a new offense? Doesn't matter how good of a quarterback you are. If you're getting a new offense, there's time, new players, new coaches, new things. There's time it takes. So how could I knock them in training camp if they're not even giving them the lenience to get out there and learn and get in rhythm? But on the other side of it, yeah, I'm going to be a little concerned. I mean, remember, we're coming off a 1-6 stretch. Hurts didn't look great down the stretch. He wasn't really into it. I mean,
hasn't looked good in the offseason.
Hasn't looked good. I mean, granted, I don't put much stock in minicamp, but you're right. You will add that into the equation. Now it's more practice he doesn't look good in. Yeah, it's fair to be concerned about it. I think I'll probably be exactly like that. I'm going to be like, I'm a little concerned, but I don't want to put too much stock on it. Let me see how it looks in the season.
Last one for you. What's more of a concern for you, the right guard position or how the secondary will be shuffled out?
I think the secondary. Maybe I've gotten spoiled with Jeff Stoutland, but it just seems like it always works, man. It just seems like for the last 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, we just always have it figured out on the offensive line. Now there's levels. Some days are, you're the top and some days you're not, but I don't have much concern with the offensive line, whether they go, I don't know if it's going to be Tyler Steen. We'll see. He hasn't really done much to win the job. Now they're kind of giving it to him, but he was a tackle in college. That's what
when Stoutland says that he's shown me.
Right.
Right.
I'll listen to that.
I'm taking, he gets the benefit of the doubt of any coach in that building.
Yeah, that's fair. So that's why I would say the secondary. But honestly, dude, I feel better about the secondary now than I did about last year going in with Darius Slay and James Bradbury. I think
the problem is going to be getting the right combination, though.
Yes, it's very true. We've been talking about it. Like, who's it going to be?
Yeah.
And they're probably going to try and
how much youth, how much experience? What's the Bradbury factor? Still on the club? Are they keeping him?
I want Keely Ringo in there, man. I really do. I think he is the physical. He brings the aspect to the cornerback room that you're missing with Darius Slay. He's got the experience, the pedigree, all those things. But Darius Slay is not a tackler. He's not a physical guy. And I'm not knocking him. He's 34. I mean, it's tough to go there. But that's what Keely Ringo brings. I'd like to see him out there. But then you have two high draft picks and one first rounder. I mean, where do they slot in? How much do
There's another battle between Vic and the front office because Vic's going to play the best dudes. He said that he's going to play the best guys.
It's true. You're right.
Darius Slay said it. He's going to play the best guys.
Yeah, and that's where I wonder how much of this is going to be drawn out into the season. And I think you're gonna learn a lot, but we'll never know the intricacies. Like if Quinyon Mitchell's out there, and he shouldn't be. Now I think he should be. I mean, John has said he's looked pretty good, so we'll see. But if he's out there, I don't think Vic's gonna be like, oh yeah, I wanted Keeley, but the organization told me. You know what I mean? Like, we're never gonna know. We're never gonna find out. But I feel pretty good about the back end, honestly. I think we have a bunch of young players that have the potential to be something. Now, there's that word potential. I get why you don't like it. It's a fair thing to not like, but that's where we're at right now. I mean, when you draft 2 young guys, that's all you can be in, you know? I mean, we didn't go and sign somebody. We drafted 2 guys. Keely Ringo's coming into his second year. He guys showed some promise last year, and I think he has a high upside. I think if he stayed in school, he would have been drafted above Quinyon Mitchell this year. Maybe would have fell to the Eagles in the first round, but look, a lot of young guys, a lot of talent in the room. The biggest thing is going to be the communication with the Fangio defense. A lot of moving parts on defense. You know, Slay talked about that on that podcast he was on, Chris Long's. So we'll see. I mean, I would say that the corners are a bigger concern than the offensive line just because of Jeff Stoutland.
Angelo Cataldi's coming on at the bottom of the hour. How you doing?
Very excited to hear Big Mangy.
I can't wait to have that conversation with him about some of the conversations that we just talked about with the quarterback, because Zander, it's totally true here. Every single quarterback that you've had since 2000 has gone through the same BS with his leadership is questioned. They don't really, outside of McNabb, every other quarterback has had a short term in their development. And since 17, the organization, I mean, are they coaching him right is going to be the big fundamental this year. So, hey, by the way, great stuff as always. Don't forget to catch Zander, Birds 365. Zander, where are we on the like list right now? By the way, I said Angelo Cataldi at 4:30. I appreciate it. By the way, 14 days out to the start of training camp.
207 on the likes. No, 96. Sorry.
96. All right, guys. We got to pick that up a little bit. Halfway through the program, we're trying to get to 200 likes. Zander, great stuff. I appreciate it. We'll catch you tomorrow, man. Thank you again for coming aboard.
Yep. See everybody. Thanks, everybody in the chat. Appreciate you all. Love you all.
And keep it here, National Football Show.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.